Whether or not Patrice Bergeron returns to the Boston Bruins, this team is in desperate need of some help down the middle. On today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, we're going to take a look at some of the options that present themselves via free agency.
Your Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B, as well as take a look around the NHL. I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. The podcast is free and available on all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube, so please hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. If you're on Twitter, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins. Same on Instagram. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team for various outlets for about 17 years now. One of the big questions facing this team is down the middle. It's been a question since David Krejci decided to head back to his native Czechia and play for his hometown team. And it's an even bigger question for the Bruins with Patrice Bergeron's future somewhat in the balance. Will he retire? Will he come back? What do the Boston Bruins do? Either way, really. If Bergeron comes back, obviously you have your first line center in the bag. He's a Selke Trophy finalist, likely a Selke Trophy winner for a record fifth time. And, hockey gods willing, he comes back and plays one, maybe two more seasons. And we're all blessed because of it. Elsewhere down the middle, you have Charlie Coyle, Eric Howla, Thomas Nosek, Jack Studnicka perhaps, making the jump to the Bruins full-time. But again, you're stuck with this center by committee without a true second-line center down the middle. Now, what are the options for the Boston Bruins when it comes to acquiring a center via free agency? There's a few big names that are unrestricted free agents. The big one, Nazem Kadri. He had an excellent season for the Colorado Avalanche. 71 games played. He had 28 goals, 59 assists. Making $4.5 million against the cap for the Avalanche. Incredible value. He's 31 years old, probably in line for a substantial raise. And we'll get to Boston's cap situation here in a moment. But he's an option for sure. That would be a coup for the Bruins if they were able to land him. You may not like him as a hockey player, but I think he's one of those guys that if he's a member of your team, you're going to root for him. I've been rooting for him during these playoffs because of how he has continued to play through these racist threats that he's received on social media. Next, you have Claude Giroux, a couple years younger than Patrice Bergeron. They pretty much had identical seasons offensively. Giroux with 21 goals, 44 assists. Bergeron with 25 goals and 40 assists. Not quite as strong defensively, of course, but Giroux would be a great addition to the Boston Bruins. You have Ryan Strome. He's younger, He's probably more of a second line center, perhaps a guy you sign if Bergeron comes back. 54 points in 74 games this season. He's still playing right now with the Rangers in the second round. An interesting name, Vincent Trochek. Familiar with him because of the Lambo Prius comment that Brad Marchand made during the season. Can't compare the two, but could they play together? Trochek, an unrestricted free agent this coming summer. The next one on my list would be Evgeni Malkin. He's 35. He had 41 games played, 42 points. Among available centers, he had the second highest point per game rate at 1.02. Now, he's oft injured. He's 35 years old. Not quite sure what the price tag would be on any of these guys, really. But how fun would it be to see Evgeni Malkin playing for the Boston Bruins? Still one of, I don't want to say the best players in the game, but still one of the best center options, to be sure. Now, complicating things for the Boston Bruins is their lack of salary cap space. Right now, they are projected to have around 2.4 million in projected cap space. Already 80.12 roughly million dollars committed to next season. And that's without Patrice Bergeron signed. That's a problem. Where will the space come from? How will they possibly be able to sign Bergeron and another piece? Will it have to come via trade? We'll talk about that more here in a moment, but first, a quick word about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts only available in their system? You can save time and money by using Rock Auto and find the exact part that you need. They're a family-owned business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and they have reliably low prices for every customer. They also have everything you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts, free and available wherever you get podcasts. So, Kadri, Malkin, Giroux, Strome, Trochek. These are some of the biggest names available at the center position via unrestricted free agency. But the Bruins don't really have a lot of room for free agent signings right now. Again, projected cap space of $2.383 million with a bunch of contracts already signed for next season. The roster's pretty much set at the moment. If you look at cap friendly. They have 12 forwards signed, 8 defensemen signed, and 2 goalies. They could field an opening night lineup right now with the roster they have signed. Now, the clear area where they can subtract, add some cap space is on defense. Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, they combining for $17 million against the cap. Those guys aren't going anywhere. But then you have Brandon Carlo making $4.1 million, Matt Grzelcyk making $3.6875 million, Derek Forbort, Mike Riley making $3 million apiece, and then Jakub Zboril, Connor Clifton, $1.1375 million and $1 million respectively. I got to think that one, maybe two of Carlo, Grzelcyk, Forbort, Riley could be on the move. Likely one or two of the lefties, seeing as Zboril is also in the mix. And that's just, an area where they can subtract to get cap space for an additional center, or even bring someone in a trade. Is that enough to re-sign Patrice Bergeron? Maybe. Is it enough to attract a top line center via free agency? Probably not. If you clear, say, Grzelcyk's $3.6875 million, that brings you to, $6 million in cap space. Yeah, that could sign you a Bergeron. But then you're pretty much set with your roster for next season. You won't be re-signing Curtis Lazar. Won't be re-signing Anton Bleed. Won't be re-signing Josh Brown. Now that includes Chris Wagner, who you could possibly bury in the AHL once again. It includes Nick Foligno, who you could possibly buy out. It includes Jake DeBrusk, who still might be traded. So there is some wiggle room at the moment, but it's going to be tough to see how they can do that. Now, perhaps the Bruins go the RFA route and probably won't offer sheet anybody, but maybe they swing a trade for a younger center. Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm sure, would sign in Winnipeg, but Dylan Strome still available. He's an RFA. Jack Roslovich, Kirby Dack would be a good young target in Chicago as well. So there's perhaps some options on the trade market. If you look down the UFA list, there's guys like Nick Paul, who is very effective for the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoffs so far. He's listed as a center, usually plays left wing. But it gets pretty thin the deeper you go on the UFA list. Nobody who's going to step in as a first or second line center. So the options for the Bruins really are to clear some cap space via trade and sign someone via free agency. Clear a Jake DeBrusk, clear a Mike Riley, maybe Matt Grzelcyk. I'd prefer to trade Mike Riley, to be honest. And sign a top line center or sign a second line center and hope that Bergeron comes back and agrees to a pretty team friendly deal. But it's going to be pretty tight. Brings me back to my suggestion that perhaps you look at trading a Brad Marchand, who's got 3 years left on his deal, $6.125 million. If you can bring in a center, you still have Hall and DeBrusk as top 6 left wingers. Pastrnak, maybe Fabian Lysell to play on the right wing. Again, not a popular idea. I can see why that's not popular, but you have to look at all possible avenues to get better. And down the middle is the clear need for the Boston Bruins at the moment. As of right now, their top 4 centers are Charlie Coyle, Eric Howla, Thomas Nosek. I don't even know who you'd put out the 4th line center. Trent Frederick, perhaps. They have some young guys who might be able to make the jump, like a John Beecher. Maybe Georgi Merkulov blows them away in training camp, earns a roster spot. Fabian Lysell, Mark McLaughlin, Oscar Steen, Jacob Lauko. But you're going to have to subtract some guys to make room for them, like a Foligno. Make Wagner's deal disappear. Do you try to move Craig Smith, who's got 1 year left on his deal? Not only him, but Foligno, Haula, Nosek, Wagner all have 1 year left, so perhaps they could be easily traded or bought out, buried. Who knows? But they're going to have to get creative, certainly, in order to improve the roster this season. And if Bergeron does decide to retire, then I don't want to say they might struggle to make the playoffs, but they might struggle to make the playoffs. So this is going to be a huge storyline this offseason. What they're able to do via free agency, via trade. It all depends on whether Bergeron returns, of course. But some pieces are going to have to be shuffled around in order to make that happen, even because he's not signing for $2.3 million. We're going to get you caught up on Bruins at the World Championship here in a moment, but first, a quick word about BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and developments on their website by using your mobile device or your laptop. You can get the Stanley Cup playoffs, basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, UFC fights, even some NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all sports wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to their website today to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Now we have 3 Bruins playing in the quarterfinals at the IIHF World Championships here on Thursday. 2 games going on as I record. One involves Czechia versus Germany. David Pastrnak scoring from David Krejci and Roman Cervenka. A very effective line for Czechia so far. They have a 1-0 lead on Germany at the moment. Another game going on right now, Canada, Sweden. And in net for Sweden is Linus Ullmark. And they have a 2-0 lead over Team Canada at the moment. Goals from Carl Klingberg and William Nylander. So Ullmark could, I don't want to jinx anything, but he could be backstopping Team Sweden to a, maybe not an upset win. It's not a best-on-best tournament per se, but to to a win over Canada. That's ongoing, and we'll bring you all the results on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Last night, the St. Louis Blues with a comeback victory over the Colorado Avalanche to remain alive in their series. That's 3-2. Tonight, Rangers, Carolina, 7 p.m. That series is tied at 2. And the Oilers could advance to the conference finals with a win over the Calgary Flames. Jaromir Jagr, I don't know if you saw, but he was involved in a pretty serious looking car accident yesterday. Thankfully, he is okay. And looks like he wants to play a 35th professional season of hockey for Kladno in Czechia this season. Just an unreal specimen of a man that he is. Also, you may have seen Tom Wilson will miss 6 to 8 months after undergoing surgery for an injury that he sustained during the playoffs. So perhaps he might miss a Bruins game or two. Interested to see what the schedule looks like for next season, and could be some missing in that one, and fewer fireworks in a game against the Washington Capitals. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. Tomorrow we'll recap the quarterfinal games, preview the semifinals at the World Championship. Hopefully all 3 Bruins advance. Jeremy Swayman in action later today, backstopping Team USA. And I've got 3 pitch tonight, so I'm very much looking forward to that, as long as the rain holds off. And probably catch the latest episode of The Staircase on HBO Max. Hope you're all doing well. Crazy times. Be kind to one another. Take a break from social media if you need one. And I'll talk to you again tomorrow here on the Locked On Bruins podcast. Your team every single day.